What if I told you that by this time next year, your team will have a new member who never sleeps, never complains, and can handle the work of 3 junior employees? But they aren't human? Two-thirds of executives believe AI agents will reshape the workplace more than the internet did. And if you think that sounds like hype, PwC says that 79% of companies already have AI agents working right now. Today, we're talking about what happens when AI stops being a tool you use and becomes a colleague that you manage, and the steps you can take to prepare yourself for this brave new world of work. I'm joined today by my AI colleague, Owen, AI Owen, as he's more commonly known. So we'll see if this
Beep
works.
boop bop.
Hello,
Beep boop
AI
bop.
Owen. I'm going to have to mute AI Owen. He seems to be malfunctioning. Hopefully PwC and Cisco and OpenAI have a little bit more to offer than my own poor engineering of my cloned AI brother.
You motherfucker.
Hey, calm down. All right, that's the mute button. Okay, so today we're talking about the human AI collaboration and a bold prediction for 2026. That is, that instead of using separate AI tools, 2026 will see integrated workflows where humans, AI assistants, and AI agents work as a single team. Okay, so I read this interesting blog post by Cisco. You may or may not recognize Cisco. They're a big networking company. So what it does is it talks about how connected intelligence, which is the concept of effectively having humans, AI assistants and AI agents working closely in tandem with each other, kind of tightly knitted together. It removes the limits of geography and individual capacity. I mean, if you just think about that for a second, two of the components of that, AI assistants and AI agents, they don't have the same capacity constraints that you or, well, I guess AI Owen doesn't have capacity constraints, even if he's, not playing ball today. So thinking a little bit further, Cisco talks about knowledge and expertise moving instantly to where they're needed. So digital workers can surface insights in context, automate workflows quietly, and keep work moving forward without interrupting human creativity or decision-making. So what does that mean? That means think about the small kind of disruptive tasks that might get in the way of your flow, of you doing the things that only you as a human can do. For example, maybe you have to write up things at the end of the day. You need to fill out a timesheet, whatever, take phone calls from customers. These are small examples of little parts of your job that are probably not going to be the core component of your role. And if you ship those off to an AI assistant or agent, then that leaves you with the headspace required to let your human creativity and decision-making, the things that you as a human are good at, that AI is not good at, that gives you time and space to focus on those. Okay, so that means that effectively what AI will become to you is an integrated team member. For the last 5 to 10 years, there's been a lot of talk about closing the distance between people, Facebook, for example. But by 2026, we'll be closing the gap between people and AI, and even between AIs themselves, knitting them together. We'll start to rely more on AI co-workers and specialists that can handle everything from summarizing meetings, there we go, previously the job of a secretary, to translating content into different languages. This applies both in the corporate setting and in the creative world. And even offering expert advice and recommendations. As the AI gets further and further embedded into our workflows, its context is going to grow and grow. What might today sound like a rather silly suggestion from ChatGPT will only improve with precision and accuracy. It's the same thing, isn't it? Based on the increased amount of context that we will provide to it in the future as it's part of our day-to-day workflows. Okay, so It seems a bit abstract, right? You're going to have a teammate. AI Owen has joined your team. He's actually been engineered, had another year of engineering behind him. Cisco's got behind him, and he's working beautifully. How does that change things? Firstly, employees, that's in this case you, will need to learn how to delegate effectively. That is to provide clear context and instructions, specify data sources and expected formats, and to define the scope and boundaries of these tasks. So effectively, a lot of this, you can think about it today, is prompting, right? But what you're actually doing is more like the traditional form of management. It's saying, okay, Mr. or Mrs. Employee, I want you to do a thing for me. Here's everything you need to know. Go away and do it. Come back to me. That's all you're doing. This next point is that you're shifting away from creating something to reviewing something. And that's exactly the shift that you take when, in the more traditional sense, when you move from being a sole contributor, is that the right phrase? Like a creative contributor in a business setting, to a manager, which is where you're actually responsible for the output of your, what's the nice word? I was going to say subordinates. Your team members. There we go. And this is a significant change, right? Imagine every single contributor in a company suddenly becoming a manager, because that is effectively what's going to happen. They will still, of course, focus on the tasks that humans are, and particularly they are best placed to do. But there's going to be an ever increasing amount of reviewing work that's being generated, as well as maintaining the types of things that the AI cannot do. So there's a document from OpenAI I went through. It has an inverted pyramid. So basically at the moment, like in more traditional sense of the word, junior and mid-level employees, we're kind of responsible more for creating the work, doing the work, rather than reviewing it and presenting it. So this talks about actually flipping it around and being the opposite. So we're going to be spending more time on the reviewing and presenting side of the work than we will be in the creating side of it. Because, I mean, you've seen how quickly it takes ChatGPT to respond to a question, right? Or to a request. There's no way us mere mortals can compete with AI Owen. So that's that. Now, AI agents, I mean, I work in tech, right? I've done for a number of years, and it always seems a little bit abstract still to me. Like, I hear it's going to be a huge thing. 79% of, companies have AI agents in some way, shape, or form working for them. But what does that actually mean? What are examples of that, right? Some examples from this OpenAI document are employee agents. So this is be the most familiar to everybody. There's things like ChatGPT as an agent, and we go into what that means as an agent in a minute. It's something that I've got quite a bit of experience with at this point, so that's good. We can deep dive that one. Domain agents. This is interesting. So deep expertise or high privilege tasks, i.e., they have a lot of additional context. So what I was just mentioning there a minute ago, maybe if I actually did replace Owen with AI Owen, then perhaps he would have followed the entirety of the Signal Over Noise podcast and will be aware of absolutely everything that we have talked about, and he would then be better placed than human Owen, who unfortunately is fallible and can forget things and not recall things at the drop of a hat. Sorry, human Owen. You're great. Then, operational agents. So, behind the scenes automation. So this is nice, actually. It's the kind of like the thought process of like, okay, if, for example, you had a Chrome extension that was tracking your every click, it sounds kind of a bit dystopian, and not like there's a lot of trust being put in you by your employer. But if you could have an agent that focuses on automation, seeing those repetitive tasks that you're doing and building automations quietly in the background, how friggin' awesome would that be? And finally, customer-facing agents. These are the ones we're already kind of familiar with. These are like support bots, chat bots, sales assistants, the kinds of things you interact with when you go on a website and you've got a problem. Could be improved, but some of them you can be quite impressed and I think there's definitely varying degrees of goodness in them. But yeah, cool. Okay. So restaurants might have a voice AI agent taking bookings. An accounts team might use an agent to chase overdue bills, or a construction management agent might reschedule subcontractors when weather delays occur. Agentic AI will become a standard teammate rather than just another tool, with OpenAI believing that half of companies already using generative AI are expecting to launch agentic AI applications by 2027. For example, the company I work for, we build software, and we're already building agents to be able to replicate some of the work that we as product managers do. So over the Christmas break, I spent some time building a bunch of gems. So that's a Gemini concept rather than Claude or ChatGPT, which effectively will help to complete standardized product manager tasks according to best practice. So basically what it does is you upload the documents that you have. So that's the context of the problem. It knows, I've given it a bunch of instructions about like best practices, frameworks that well-respected product managers and product manager thought leaders have come up with and use. Then it effectively meshes the two together and then asks for some additional context, and then it will spit out the outputs from there. And then in that example, what you're effectively doing is you're abstracting away all of that thought process of like, what's the correct way of doing this, and just like guiding and managing the agent through that. Or in this case, it's called a gem. Anyway, that's the first step. And that isn't particularly like crazy, and it's actually quite nicely, it's available to anybody. I've got probably a better example of that in a very specific use that I'll bring up again in a second. But in the case of an AI agent becoming a teammate, the next steps we're going to take at work is for some developers to effectively connect all of these different agents, which have very specific set product management tasks, string them together and allow an interface for just a human to start from the beginning and say, oh, I'm doing a discovery piece of work to create some new software. What are the things I should be doing? And it will take them through it. I think a nice analogy or metaphor would be to think of Jarvis from Iron Man, or a more boring, plain one, Alexa, but for product managers.
Why gems? And can anyone find agent mode or product mode or whatever it's called, project mode?
Yeah, so it's probably quite important I land this point and explain exactly how this works, because it really isn't as scary as it might sound. Building an AI agent is actually quite straightforward for non-technical people. So in ChatGPT, which I'm going to assume the vast majority of people who use an LLM will be using, there is a setting on the left-hand menu that says projects. So in ChatGPT, it's called a project. In Gemini, it's called a gem. And in Claude, I think it's also called, it's called a project. I know that. Copilot is called an agent, just to name what it actually is. Anyway, so in there, there's just a few things. It's all in plain English. There's no code required. And you will provide it, most importantly, with a set of instructions. For example, if you are creating for my job, let's say I want to create an agent that is going to take user feedback for somebody who's using an existing digital product, and I want to convert that into a bunch of stories, i.e. pieces of work for developers to work on. That's the process I want to do. So take user feedback, convert that into work for developers, right? And there's going to be a particular framework and a way of laying out and a format that the developers will want to receive that in. And there'll just be, in reality, from the user, there'll just be kind of like a part of work, like a load of thoughts that are not very well organized and will just be like kind of off the cuff. The job here of that AI agent is to take that, distill it, understand the essence of it, and then convert that into some work that the developer can go ahead, take, and put into the product themselves. Okay, so the way this would work is when you're providing the instructions, you will say, hey, you're going to receive some unstructured feedback from users. In this case, I want you to write user stories. I want you to write acceptance criteria. And what you can do is choose a particular person you respect or framework or whatever that you respect. So maybe you want to say, I want to use this, I work in the developers work in a certain way, explain the way they work in plain English, and then upload all the context you can do. So, for example, ChatGPT or Claude doesn't know what your product does or what it's for. So you'd say, okay, so by the way, my product does this thing. The easiest way of doing it really is just upload any existing content you've got. So you could maybe just upload your landing page, the content of your landing page, or if you have any documentation where it's like, this is how the product works, whatever. User manual, for example, is really good. You upload that into the gem or the project or whatever, and then hit save gem. And boom, you've got your agent is set up ready to go and to automate that particular task. It's really, really straightforward. I would really, really encourage people to give it a go. You'll be surprised and impressed by what you can achieve with it.
Can I ask, have you thought of any domestic duties that we could be using this for? And I ask that because I think of how many hours of my life have been liberated by somebody inventing the dishwasher and the washing machine.
Yeah. So meal planning would be a really good example because it would be a set of repetitive instructions, i.e., particularly if you live in a house with more than two, where you can't retain every single person's individual dietary requirements, their likes, their dislikes, whatever. If you said, okay, mum and dad, they like these foods, they have these requirements. Child 1, 2, and 3 have all these 3 different types of favorability for food, dietary requirements, etc. Then maybe you can then provide those instructions to a project, and then next time when you come back around, it will say, okay, I noted from last time, here's what you like. Here's some suggestions. What do you think? The interesting thing is you can continue that conversation, because if you catch something, this is the thing I didn't actually land a second ago, but is important to remember, is to correct and improve. So if the feedback comes back and says, here's your meals for the day, and you're like, oh, actually, I forgot to tell you that my son is allergic to peanuts. I'm going to go ahead and change that in the instructions, because that peanut stew that you suggested will probably give him an anaphylactic shock or whatever. So you go back and improve as you go and continue to learn from it. So I think there definitely are things, but I guess the easiest way to think of it is the repetitive tasks that mostly involve thought process.
Can that agent take in and go and search for its own real-time online inputs? Could, in this example of meal planning, food prepping for the week for the family, could we say, we want to eat local and our local supermarket is Tesco's, so can the meal prep for the week contain vegetables and fruits in season for where we are that are on sale?
Absolutely. I don't know about the on sale part, but definitely the in season part. It might struggle. So it definitely can use the internet to search for things. I don't know if it could rely so much on a specific shop stock levels or whatever's available there. Definitely the seasonal side it can do, and we've used it ourselves for that. Did we? I might be lying. But definitely it would be able to say, okay, if you provide it with, hey, I'm in Dunedin, New Zealand, it's currently January, what's in season here, then yeah, it would definitely know exactly what particular things are in season, and then integrate that into said meal plan. So yeah, it's really neat, man. It's really neat. And yeah, maybe any type of practice using these agents doesn't necessarily need to be in the workplace, as you've highlighted there. It could just be, I need to do this thing every week. Kind of annoying. And it takes up a bunch of my time doing it. So why not automate domestic tasks? I like it. So yeah. Right. What does that mean for you though? What can you do to make sure you future-proof, you're ready for this bold new world? So, firstly, start experimenting immediately. So, the example I've just used there, what OpenAI's document advises is that teams learn best by doing, trying new tasks, giving direction, reviewing the outputs, and adjusting their prompts and instructions. So, pick one repetitive task that you do weekly, or daily, even better. Try to delegate it to ChatGPT in project mode. Just going to quickly bring through the other ones. Claude in project mode. Copilot is called agent mode. And Gemini is called a gem. Okay. Then review what it produces. So did it produce something good? Or did it just spout out some rubbish? If it didn't work as well as you hoped it would do, then you're going to need to refine your instructions and tell it exactly how you want it to be done. Correct it effectively. I guess one important thing as well here is don't wait for your company to tell you to do this. Like, this is going to do a couple of things. You're going to be able to talk about this with your manager and explain this is how you're getting efficiency gains. That's going to help you stand out from the crowd in the workplace. But also, it just shows a lot of initiative. And frankly, it's going to help you with your own workflows. So there's that. What does that mean? For example, I, at work, recently had to effectively rewrite a load of content based on some instructions that were received from the senior leadership team. It was to rewrite a bunch of these, sorry, I work in tech, so a bunch of these stories or tickets, they're probably more commonly known, so they fit within a particular format. Now, there was a set of very specific instructions, and had ChatGPT not existed, or in this case, Copilot not existed, this would have taken me all week. Now, instead, what I did with a Copilot agent, which works the same way as ChatGPT projects do, is I created an individual project, uploaded all of the instructions for the new format, and then told it, okay, this is the context. Everything I'm going to paste into the chat box, you need to rewrite based on this format. Here's all the additional context. So I uploaded a bunch of documents about the project, and here's where the project exists within the wider program and world around that. And it was amazing. This task, which would have taken me at least a week of solid work, took me no longer than half a day. All it required was a couple of additional questions. I guess one piece of best practice I've noticed is, like, make sure in your instructions you include the phrase, if you don't understand something, don't hallucinate, ask me for more context before you generate the output. Because as we've been through before, these AI assistants do quite love to please, and they will fill the gaps rather than ask you for more information. So that's the first step. Start experimenting immediately. Number 2, learn to delegate like a manager. So this document from OpenAI, talking about AI agents and their place in the workplace going forward, emphasizes that you need to give agents context like you would to a junior colleague. Instead of plan my team's quarterly offsite, write something like, plan my team's quarterly offsite. There are 20 of us. We like to go to these types of venues. It must be within 50 miles of where we are today, etc., etc. Just provide it all the context it needs. Practice being specific about what you want, defining the format/structure you need, identifying which data sources should be used, setting clear boundaries on what actions are okay. Nice. The third thing you need to do is develop your review and audit skills. So this document from OpenAI talks about supervision and auditing being critical. So you've been through this already, but just think about how you do that. So what you can do is you can review the chain of thought, which effectively is how it came to the conclusion it came to with these LLMs. So reading through the whole length of it, if you kind of come to the end, it'll make like a final recommendation. But the whole thought process before that is how it's come up with that. You can check the quality and completeness of the output. Do you need to adapt the way that you prompted it? Ask it follow-up questions to expand. This one is critical. Verify citations and references. Question it. My days. The amount of times, honestly, this happens on a daily basis where I will talk to Claude, my tool of choice, and he'll give me some statistic, and I'll say, right, cool, where'd you get that from? And then the first thing it will always say back to me is, you were absolutely right to question me on that. And then it will effectively say, doesn't kind of mean what I meant it, what I said it meant in the last message. So really just be careful if you're ever going to quote anything, or particularly statistics, from these LLMs. And yeah, request specific changes rather than starting over. So like you would do to a junior employee, you're not going to say, when they come to you, a little bit wet behind the ear, oh yeah, I've done this job for you, sir. Maybe just be kind. Don't say, start this all over again. Say, actually, could you just change this little thing for me, please? Because yeah, it's going to be much easier for you to kind of course correct from a point where you've just deviated a little bit, rather than just being like, right, to start again, because you might go off and plod the wrong direction. 4, keep a use case library. That's pretty self-explanatory. Just if you find a good use case, bookmark it, write it down, and you can come back to it another day. And 5, we've been over this one already, but it's really important that it lands. Shift your mindset from maker to manager. Okay. It's a big mental shift. The old mindset is, I need to create this report, analysis, plan, whatever. And the new mindset needs to be, I need to brief someone on creating this, then review and refine their work. And you can get to work practicing all of this today. So just very quickly recap on what this all means for you. What does AI Owen joining your team mean for said listener? Firstly, you need to start experimenting immediately. Secondly, you need to learn to delegate like a manager. Thirdly, develop your review and audit skills. 4th, keep a use case library. And 5th, shift your mindset from maker to manager. That's it. Any thoughts or questions, Mr. Sloan?
Yeah, I've got a few actually. I guess this is quite a technical episode, isn't it? But I'm trying to think, like, who is this for? And I guess it's for anyone that wants to free up more time in their week and or get a sort of jump on their competition in whatever field they're in. Because like you say, that the rate of production of creation of content, be it professional, technical, or creative, is so much higher through an AI agent than any agentic human, no matter how creative and inventive they are, can pump out. So by moving from maker to manager and essentially working on your review and refinement skills, I guess, you can just out-compete your peers. Is that why you've decided to, go through this on our Meaningful Productivity podcast?
Yeah, I mean, honestly, I think the reality is this is the way the world is going. So if you can prepare yourself for this and be one step ahead of your peers, then that's going to put you in a really good spot. I mean, also in reality, I think I definitely have a significant amount of anxiety associated with the disruption that AI is going to have in the workplace. For me, as someone working in tech, it is very prevalent. The company I work for, which is a software development company, when I started my job there a year ago, the director of HR who was inducting me said, "Oh, it's quite interesting, Sam. We haven't employed a single engineer for 16 months. Any engineer, senior, junior, mid-level, whatever." So like the disruption is very real in the tech industry, and I'm sure it's real across the rest of the employment market. So it could also be a way of quashing any anxiety that might be around the disruption that AI might cause in the job market, which I think is real. I think it's very real.
Yeah. And we spoke last time, didn't we, about action eating anxiety? And I was giving you the example of the C squared. And the reason why we have a brain is to have a system of basically connecting our sensory inputs and our motor outputs, isn't it? And that's why we have brains, nerves, and muscles really to do things and interact with our environment. If you see that your environment's changing and your job is threatened because all jobs are threatened, or because you happen to have picked something way before the existence and emergence of this technology that actually happens to be bread and butter for it, like that's just really shit luck, basically. There's nothing you've done wrong. Then doing something about it, learning new skills, learning to integrate said new technology. I think of that Douglas Adams quote where I think it was like, anything that comes up between 0 and 15 years of age is nice and normal. Anything that comes up between 15 and 35 is exciting. And anything that comes up after 35 is terrifying. Now, obviously, like that's, there's like this kind of ageist connotation to it, but there's also like a truth in terms of neuroplasticity, or our ability to make new connections in the brain. We think about like, how good are children at learning languages, 1, 2, whatever they're confronted with, compared with adults trying to learn another language. If you feel like you can attempt to adopt new technologies and integrate them and become a more productive, useful employee or entrepreneur, then know that others will feel that they can't, or that they shouldn't have to, or, whatever. So, yeah, I guess if a tool is good enough, sharp enough, that it does what this is promising to do, then you should want to, seek out the opportunity and use it. Regarding that anxiety, I think that AGI and so artificial general intelligence, or just really bloody good generative artificial intelligence, can be a bit scary because, well, it's the first technology that's not just a sharper tool for us to wield. It's one that threatens to execute the decision making. You were speaking about thoughts. It doesn't have thoughts, but it can be pretty easily mistaken for thinking. When you look at the chain of, AI isn't just a sharper tool. It's the thing wielding the tool, which has always been us. I think that it could go one of two ways. I think that the Sam Altmans and Elon Musk's of 2025, 26 might end up looking like the Richard Dawkins of the new atheist movement, where sort of they used science to basically direct a wrecking ball at religious stories and dogma, basically smashed them apart and said, these are the reasons why they must be false. We've killed your God. Get on with it. And they basically sort of washed their hands of it there and said, it was never our role. It's not really on us to build a life that retains the meaning that we've taken away, the wisdom, the sense of community and identity, and the rules that guide society. Like we've done our bit. We've been true to what science tells us. I do wonder if Altman and Musk are going to end up like that. They say, well, you can focus on being a manager. But it's like, well, actually, what if an AI agent is a more effective manager of the other AI agent than you? Then you cut the weakest link out of the system, sort of pirate's code. He who falls behind gets left behind. If AI can run a business without human team members, then why the heck not? Or maybe it'll be more like the case of the O-ring when NASA were building new rockets, I think back in the 90s or the early 2000s. They were building these rockets, and the O-ring, I think, was the weakest, most breakable part of the entire machine. And essentially it becomes a really important part of the machine because of that, because you've got this highly complex, expensive machine that can't fail because it's got human life aboard and all that. The weakest link becomes highly valuable because it's the weakest link in an important system. And maybe that'll be us. Maybe the humans will be this just cumbersome, slow, needy, expensive part of the system, but will be important because although we kind of suck, we add something to the complex system. Hopefully that's the case.
Well, that's the thing. We can be held accountable, whereas the AI is kind of like left to its own accord if you don't review and control it.
Yeah.
So I think there's something in that. Also love that you started off with the C square analogy. I just had this image of me like basically like downloading my brain and uploading it into AI Owen, so I don't need to use it myself anymore. Which is somewhat similar to the C square reaching maturity and dissolving its own brain, right? But yes, yeah, I agree though. Where that leaves humans, I think is probably up for debate. The story of moving us towards the more management role is great, but what does that mean for all of the people who are being displaced? Because ultimately those tasks, like, the secretary taking the notes from the meeting, or frankly anybody taking the notes from the meeting, people taking a booking appointments in restaurants, whatever, these are tasks that people were doing that are now not doing. So we'll see where this goes, because yeah, the future is currently unwritten.
And I think there are a few things to bear in mind here. I think that basically for most of human history, whilst it's remained a technological impossibility, the idea of working very little and having shit tons of leisure time has actually always been held in really high regard. And it's been a really exciting, almost panacea that we should be working towards. And I think there are quite a few like 20th century economists who would predict that we'd already be at sort of 15 hours a week. And they tend to predict things like we'd spend a lot of time doing fine art. But I do think that that's probably a hollow end, particularly when no matter how fine your art gets, you could have a generative AI churn out 1,000 pieces that are all better instantaneously. So that's perhaps not going to be the end. But I think we can turn ourselves either towards things, like you say, where human accountability is going to be valued, where human touch, human authenticity, those sorts of things are going to be valued, or basically things where maybe there's not enough money in it, or it's not a big enough sort of global employed situation that actually the big AI or big robotics firms are going to go for it. So, for example, I think probably we'll be paying for humans to make our coffees and cut our hair because for whatever reason, like you say, human accountability, but also human trust, we'd rather have a stranger, a complete stranger, shaving our face like inches from our carotids than a robot. And the same's true of a coffee. We'd rather pay a stranger to jiggle the buttons and shake the mug around than have a machine do it all when we get the opportunity. So there are roles that will remain human. And I think robotics seems to be lagging AI. If it's a role that can be done through the interface of a computer screen, well, that's where AI already is. So that would be under threat. If it's something that involves you manually manipulating something or someone through space, well, the robots aren't there yet. So that will buy you some time. So yeah, I think there are some fields of employment. I don't think there's going to be a national re-education campaign or program because, like, let's face it, like it should have already started. Like you're saying, with your tech company no longer needing to employ engineers. Well, for starters, like what would you be, upskilling people into? And who's funding it? Like who's paying for this? Because actually university is like ruinously expensive and lots of people are currently thinking that it's not worth the cost because there's no guaranteed earnings at the end of it. So it's a tough one. And I think there are some things you can do. I think, redefining your value in terms of relationships with other humans and a relational value rather than a purely economic one is a good idea if the economic value of labor is going to be crushed by capital and code. And that's one. And I think, engaging with your community and your environment, these things that maybe AI is not very good at doing, knitting a community
Well,
together.
one of the things, so I listened to one of the previous podcasts that you did actually. You were talking about personal finance, but it was in the context of like choosing how you would remain like financially secure long term. And the example you used was like do something you would enjoy and happily do and continue to do well past retirement. So I was thinking there was like, okay, maybe like your job of, if you have a job of taking notes in meetings or taking bookings for restaurants or doing like these small repetitive tasks time and time again, maybe you don't enjoy that. I don't know. Maybe you do. But if you don't, perhaps there's another role where you might be paid very well, but maybe you really like coffee. You want to be a barista. there will be things that you enjoy as well. So it could also be seen as an opportunity rather than just a pure straight up threat. Obviously, it's quite a scary change. And like the example of the software company not employing software engineers is kind of wild. But just remember that anyone outside of the industry, that we are very close to the AI coal face, or whatever the phrase is. So most technological advances start with what would this mean for the tech industry, as opposed to outside of that, just through kind of our own biases. So yeah, that's that, guys. I think that's probably where we call it. So, dear listener, be well, do good, and we'll catch you in the next time.
See you
Ta-ra,
guys.
ta-ra. I was going to hit the stop button. I was going to do the leave call button, but I didn't do that.